If a man comes into the picture with your ex, and you know, you like a lot of guys do this. You're like, you know what, f her. I'm not dealing with her. She's dealing with the next dude. Let that dude buy the baby stuff. You are messing up, brother. And I'm gonna tell you why. See, because if that man loves that woman and he cares about your child and he assumes the role of the man in their life, meaning he's taking care of them, he's paying bills, he's buying your kids sneakers, he's playing ball with your son, he's helping your son with his homework. By definition, legal definition, he is acting as that child's father. So for you guys that go to jail, for you take years out of your kid's life and you think, you know, oh, I'm gonna come back in, that's my kid. No, it's really not if that man was taking care of it. And that also complicates your domestic violence situation or your family court situation, excuse me. Because now when you're in court trying to get your child back, if she gets with another man who is creating this stable family unit, which is what the state is going to rely on more than just you. If this man is taking care of your child to the point where there is a structured family setting there, you're going to have a problem because the truth is that the system works to keep families apart, biological families. They like to create as much confusion in a situation as they can. Like the more confusion that goes into a domestic situation, the better it is for the court and the court staff. Because that's the more time you have to come to court, which means that's the more times they get to schedule for overtime or days to work, which means the system keeps moving. So a lot of times, you know, in anger, we tend to go back and forth with people in these processes when the truth is the only person we're really hurting is ourselves. Because every time you file a violation or the person files a violation or you do something or the person do something, even if you're right, all you're doing is extending the process and keeping these people employed. So you kind of become an inadvertent slave to the domestic violence process and to the family court process. I've been in family court 3 years, people. I've been in family court 3 years for women I never married. That is the saddest part of my situation, people. And it's taught me a lot. It's really taught me how biased family court is. So when you're navigating through the family court process, you have to remember that, at least as a minority male, is that the system is designed to be against you. You're going to do everything that you legally can to have to fight these people into solidifying your position as not being labeled what you were labeled by your accuser or your offender. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that, but the best way to do that is with evidence. And you're going to have to track as much evidence as you can to solidly justify your position. Now, certain things won't hurt. And this actually worked against me when I had I actually still have my domestic violence situation, unfortunately, because my ex is crazy. But in her crazy activity, she angered me. So a lot of times I'd be like, yo, you crazy piece of shit, leave me alone. And people, domestic violence is so biased that a man cursing at a woman because the woman is actually wronging and harassing him. The bigots, favoritists, sexists, and racists will actually use that man's language against him to try to validate he was abusive. How can you call a man abusive who's cursing a woman out, who's stalking and harassing him? People, he's frustrated, he's angry. But racist, bigots, sexists, and favoritists that hate minority men, they will use any piece of information they have to turn that victim into an offender. People, I noticed it's happened to me in 3 states, people, literally because I cursed my ex out and called her a crazy bitch for hitting my daughter and stalking me. These people tried to call me verbally abusive. People, how am I verbally abusive? Because I'm cursing someone out who's disrespecting me and assaulting my child. That's how sick the domestic violence process is. Because the truth of the matter is, people, is it's run again by bigots, racists, sectors, and favoritists, people. It's not just about black and white. It's worse for black men, but the problem with black men is you get fake Uncle Toms. And the definition, Uncle Tom actually used to be a positive term that was turned by black people to mean a black person that betrays his people. So I'm going to use it in those terms because people in the family justice process and the domestic violence, you'll get that a lot, especially when it's a black woman against a black man. Because black women have this tendency to believe that if a man insults a black woman in any capacity, he's wrong. They don't believe that there's any way that a woman would deserve disrespect, even though she may be disrespecting that man. It's okay for her to disrespect him. But if he says one thing to her, he becomes the enemy of all black women. And I think that is so wrong. I think that's the same bias that white people have put on black people or minorities for years that is now being done to us by our very women who honestly verbally assault and abuse us all the time. But if we turn around and call them and name people, we become verbally abusive. What happens to the women who's do that? What happens to the women that sits in a guy's face and insults his manhood, insults his character, may insult his position by cursing him out, embarrassing him in front of his friends, socially embarrassing him, financially embarrassing him? People, those are all things that hurt men. Men have feelings just like women. And for the most part, society tends to put on the fact that a woman's feelings only matter. And I believe this is why the domestic violence process is so flawed, because the bigots and the racists that are involved in the process tend to feel that the rights of women are more valuable than the rights of all people. Domestic violence should not only be about women, especially if we know now that women do use it as a tool to get back at men. It should be about justice. It should be about what party is actually wrong. Because the true basis of domestic violence is to give someone the right to their peace and their freedom. And if you have a situation with an offender, and it can be a woman, if she's denying a man his peace and his freedom simply for the basis that she's mad and filing litigation, people, how is that not abuse? That's just as abusive as a guy walking in a woman's face, punching her in the face, her getting out, her getting locked up, going to jail, getting out, punching her in the face again, getting locked up, going to jail, getting out, punching her in the face again. People, a woman who gets a man arrested, he gets out. She's mad he gets out because he still don't want to be with her. So she files another report. So he gets out. He gets out. He goes about his life. She's mad because she still didn't hurt him. She files another report on them. People, that's the same thing. That's abuse. Abuse takes more than the forms of a physical confrontation. Abuse can be mental. Abuse can be psychological, people. People, abuse has so many forms that for us as a society to sit back and limit domestic violence as only a man putting his hands on a woman is wrong. So when you navigate the domestic violence process, you have to consider that. You really have to consider if your offender has accused you of any physical offense of domestic violence, because that will totally change your situation and make things far more difficult for you. So in navigating the beginning of the domestic violence process, the main thing you need is knowledge and you need calm, because it's not going to be an easy and patient process. They are going to intentionally let the process drag out as long as they can, because remember, people, this is a business. This is a job. People have state jobs. They need paychecks. They need insurance. They need benefits. The only way for that to happen is for the system to have the workload that the government keeps funding them to give them more and more funding, because the caseloads are higher and higher and higher. How do they do that, people? They allow all of these fictitious claims that they know to come into the system with people who they know there's a high probability they're lying, just to keep people employed. People, that's damaging to us as minorities. So we all have to have a better understanding of the domestic violence process. And that doesn't go for victims, but it goes for offenders too. Realize that when you're doing this to someone to hurt them, you're really hurting yourself, because every time you drag them to court, you have to come to court. Every time you do something to try to get at them, yeah, you might get a charge in them, but people, now you have to validate that charge, and you're putting yourself in more jeopardy, because if that person can prove you lied on them, now you have a problem that's going to further extend your situation. And I don't think a lot of offenders in domestic violence think about that, because the truth is they're so focused with revenge, they're not looking at the after effect of the damage they do. So people, educate yourself in the processes of domestic violence. Because people, again, it's so easy to get caught up in one of these situations. Understanding the basis of what it entails will probably save you weeks of hell. Believe me, it's happened to me, people. Understanding it, wanting to gain the knowledge to stop a problem before it happens is the wisest thing that any person can do to avoid aggravation in their life, because that's the whole key, people, to avoid the aggravation that would hinder your success. So on behalf of Operation Rock, in a brief talk about the rights of minorities and justice and ways you can combat the offenses and the wrongs that may be done to you, I am inside.